Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the 2018 Doctor Who DVD, Blu-ray, and Target Books Collection Overview. Alrighty, so continuing our Doctor by Doctor look through the collection here. Today we've got a big one, because we're covering the one that most people seem to associate the most with the role of the Doctor, even casual fans or non-fans. When you say Doctor Who, this is who they think of. I'm of course talking about Tom Baker, or as some of you may know him, the guy with the scarf. So today we're going to take a look at all the DVDs and Blu-rays that I've got of Tom Baker's adventures, and all of the Target books as well. So let's get to it. We got a lot to cover today on the Doctor Who Collection Overview on the Multimedia Chronicles. Okay, here we go. Actually, quite a lot to cover. I've got more than what you see here. I just couldn't fit it all on the shelf. So we'll get to the last few things when we get to the end here. So let's start off here with Tom Baker's epic 7-year run, 40 stories. Just massive, massive run. This was my Doctor. This was the Doctor I first saw many moons ago. And if you go and watch my video, Journey of a Whovian, I talk about the first ever episodes I saw and the impression it made. So here we go. So here's Tom Baker's debut story, Robot. Lots of extras on there. Great stuff. Notable in that this story was one of the earliest ones to be filmed entirely on video. Even the location footage is filmed on video. And the reason they did that was because they did a lot of chroma key effects, and they found that in the previous season when they did Invasion of the Dinosaurs were shot on video, but the background footage of the locations was shot on film. It didn't quite match up very well. So they thought, well, if we do both on video, then it should match up better when we do the chroma key. And honestly, it does. It actually works a lot better. But kind of notable in that at the time, it was really rare to have British shows do the location footage on video as well. Now, before we get any farther here, I should mention there is, of course, the Blu-ray release of Season 12, which is Tom Baker's debut season, so that would be these 5 stories here. I do not have it yet. I do plan to get it, though, basically for the, the bump up in quality for the picture. Even though it's just upscaled standard def, it apparently does look quite good. And coming from the original PAL video source, I imagine a high-def translation of that will look better than the NTSC down conversion that the DVDs are. Plus, there's a lot of extras on it. I mean a lot of extras. We're talking 6+ hours of extras that are not on the DVD sets. Plus, they actually ported over a lot of the extras from the DVD sets as well, so pretty cool. So I will get that eventually. For now, we have the Ark in Space Special Edition. This is a 2-disc Special Edition. Very nice. This is one of the ones that also has the option of CG special effects to take the place of some of the original model work. You have the option of watching either or. You're not stuck with, the new effects if you prefer the old effects. And that one was filmed entirely in studio. Actually, there was no location work at all on that. And then we have the Sontaran Experiment, which was filmed pretty much entirely on location, and again, entirely on video. So there's actually no film in this at all. So this is just a short 2-parter, but does have a fair amount of extras on it as well. It's first appearance of the Cybermen since the previous season, the Time Warrior. And then we have the classic Genesis of the Daleks. Great stuff. The Blu-ray edition actually has an omnibus, like a truncated omnibus version of this story as well. Omnibus meaning it's been edited into like a movie-style presentation. Now this one does have some film footage for the location work. Not very much though. It's mostly all done in studio. And then this one actually does have a fair amount of film location work on it. Revenge of the Cybermen. This, the tail end of this episode, of this story, the final episode of this story, was the first Doctor Who I ever saw. Prior to that, I had heard about it in a book I have about robots, and it showed some pictures of the Cybermen and of the robot from Robot. And that was the first I'd ever heard of Doctor Who, and I really wanted to check it out. And then so when I first tuned in, just randomly one day, it was a Cyberman episode, so I got to see the Cybermen briefly, well, before they got blown up. And then we have Terror of the Zygons, which is one of my all-time favorite stories. This was another one that I saw fairly early on, one of the first ones I saw. It scared the hell out of me when I was a kid. It was great. I loved it. But this is a really, really nice edition. They actually had, I guess, discrete sound elements that they were able to work with. So there's actually a really awesome 5.1 surround sound mix for the audio on this that I highly recommend checking out. It's very well done. Also, when they were going through the, I think they found the original film prints for the location footage. So they were able to restore that. And then when they did, they actually found there was an additional scene that was not in the televised version, so that you can watch an extended cut of the first episode that reincorporates that scene, which is pretty cool. And then we have Planet of Evil, which has always been a favorite of mine. This one's kind of reminiscent of Forbidden Planet, actually. It's a really good kind of spooky story. And then we have Pyramids of Mars, which is largely considered one of the all-time classic stories, one of the all-time greats, especially since the Doctor is forced to deal with an adversary that he cannot beat. Like, he tries, he pulls out all the tricks, and he just cannot beat this guy. So it's there's a real sense of genuine peril in that story. It's really, really good. And then we have the Android Invasion. Really fun one where the Doctor and Sarah find themselves in what appears to be a village of people, but they're actually androids. So it's a plan to create android duplicates and stuff. And here we have Frankenstein done Doctor Who style with the brain of Morbius. Great stuff. Always really enjoyed that one. And then we have the Seeds of Doom, where the plants are rising up against mankind to destroy us all. And unlike M. Night Shyamalan's The Happening, this one is actually really good. Then we have The Mask of Mandragora. Great stuff. And every single one of these is just loaded with extras and stuff like that. And then we have Sarah Jane Smith's final story, The Hand of Fear. Although fans will know that is not the last time we see Sarah Jane Smith. She was actually fortunate in that she was one of the few companions to have several return appearances. And eventually her own spin-off series. And then we have The Deadly Assassin, which is notable in that I think it's the only story in classic Who that doesn't feature any companions. So it's actually just the Doctor on his own. This is one of my all-time favorite stories. I love this one so much. It's basically the Manchurian Candidate done Doctor Who style, and it's just it's a big murder mystery, and it's great. We learn a lot more about Gallifrey. This is where we first see like the Gallifrey, sort of formal dress and stuff like that, and learn more about the culture. And a lot more about Gallifrey, but like far more than we've ever... In fact, I think that's the first mention of the Doctor's home planet being called Gallifrey. And we learned quite a lot about the culture there, far more than we've ever learned before. So it's a very important story. Also introduces the Matrix for the first time. And then we have The Face of Evil, introducing Leela, very popular companion. She was so good. And then we have the Robots of Death Special Edition. This was a longtime favorite of mine, and actually the first story that I ever owned on VHS. My parents bought it for me as a reward for doing well on a history test. And I cherished that VHS for many, many years until I went and sold it along with all my other Doctor Who VHSs. In retrospect, I wish I had kept that one, just because that one was personally special, but oh well. Hindsight, eh? And then we have The Talons of Weng Chiang Special Edition. This is great stuff. This was released on VHS with some of the violent footage cut out. This version is, of course, complete and uncut. But Yeah, great stuff. Kind of Doctor Who does Sherlock Holmes. Interesting side note, this also is the story that introduces Jago and Lightfoot, which have since had their own spin-off series in Big Finish audio form. There was talk at the time of giving them a spin-off series, so it's kind of interesting that years and years later they got that spin-off series, albeit in audio form. And then we have the Horror of Fang Rock, which is kind of the last of the gothic and sort of Hammer-style horror stories. The tail end, basically the end of the Philip Hinchcliffe era and the beginning of the Graham Williams era. And then here we have a double bill of The Invisible Enemy, which is the first appearance of K9, and then K9 and Company, A Girl's Best Friend, which is one of the last appearances of K9 in the classic series, in which we finally see Sarah Jane Smith again. So it was going to be the pilot for a spin-off series, but it didn't do very well, so it never went beyond that pilot episode. But yeah, good stuff. And then we have Image of the Fendal. Very good. And we have the Sunmakers, which is actually a really clever and witty satire of taxation. I didn't appreciate this one much as a youth, but in my adult years now, I have a much greater appreciation for this story. Really enjoyed seeing it again. And then we have Underworld, which I don't know why, but this one just seems to be so forgettable. Like, I just watched this again recently, and I've already completely forgotten what happens in it. Like, I just have no recollection of it whatsoever. I don't know why. Maybe that speaks volumes right there. And then we have The Invasion of Time, another one that was kind of a victim to strike action. They ended up filming a lot of stuff on location, sort of like the interiors of this old factory warehouse place, doubling for the interiors of the TARDIS. So you do got to suspend your disbelief a little bit with this one, but I don't know. I always kind of had a soft spot for it. It's kind of cheesy, kind of goofy, but I always liked it. And sadly, is the last story with Leela. She very awkwardly leaves at the end, supposedly having fallen madly in love with the Gallifreyan guard, which was not set up at all at any point in the story. It was just totally random and out of nowhere. It's like, I'm in love with this guy now, and I'm leaving. Okay, well, goodbye. And here we have what for many years was the only full season set we ever got of classic Who. This is The Key to Time, which was a season-long story arc spanning 6 stories, in which the Doctor and his new companion Romana Dvora Trelundar, or Romana for short, are basically on a mission for the Time Lords to find the 6 missing pieces of the Key to Time. It's kind of a race against time because the Black Guardian is looking for them as well, so they've got to get to them before he does. And really good stuff. This was released in a box set in North America back in the early 2000s. Just kind of a bare bones release. There was a few extras on there, like some commentaries and stuff, but that's about it. This one, the actual stories have been restored much more nicely using the more up-to-date restoration techniques that they used for all the other DVD releases. And there's a more robust package of extras as well. So it's quite a nice collection. Now this particular one is just kind of in a book form. It's also one of the only North American releases where we actually got the booklet with it. Excuse me. But there are individual releases of these as well, which have individual art for each of the stories. So there we go. And the last one is 2 discs because there's tons and tons of extras on there. But really nice collection, and certainly nice to get a whole season of Who in one fell swoop like that. And then we have Destiny of the Daleks, which is features the return of Davros, and also the debut of Romana 2, because Romana actually regenerates at the beginning of this one, just because she's not dying or anything. She just basically decides she wants to regenerate, so she does. And then we have The City of Death. Oh, what a fun story. This is great. This is classic Douglas Adams right here. Great stuff. One of the few stories they did actually on location outside of Britain. This was actually filmed on location primarily in Paris, and they actually went to Paris to do it, which is pretty cool. And then we have The Creature from the Pit, which honestly is kind of silly, but I've always had a bit of a soft spot for this one just because of the silliness. I don't know why. There's just something about this one that's always appealed to me. And then we have the Nightmare of Eden. I always really like this one too, actually. It has some fun aspects to it. And the Horns of Nimon. I don't know why, but this one always scared the hell out of me as a kid. But in rewatching this one again, I really love this guy and his performance as just the completely loony sort of prophet guy who's in the, you know, suckered by the Nimon. And it's a fun story. And then we have Shada, paired up with More Than 30 Years in the TARDIS. Now this, of course, is yet another story that was victim to strike action, and it basically they filmed all of the location footage and did one studio session. They needed to do, I think, 2 more studio sessions in order to finish it, but they weren't able to remount it even after the strike. Other shows ended up taking precedence over them, and they weren't able to complete it. So it basically just remained shelved for a very long time, all this footage that they shot. There was a VHS released back in the early 90s, where Tom Baker essentially provided bridging narration to explain what was going on in the scenes that weren't filmed. All of that version of it is actually included on here as a bonus, like as an extra. And yeah, and then I don't even remember how they did this one. Features the... Oh yeah, no, this is that's the version that's on here. This is the sorry, I got confused. That's the version that's on here. Is basically a restored version of the VHS edition with the linking narration and stuff like that. This also includes the DVD-ROM on a DVD-ROM, the Flash animated adaptation featuring Paul McGann and Lalla Ward. So it's they adapted it as an 8th Doctor story. And yeah, and then it also includes the documentary More Than 30 Years in the TARDIS, which is basically a 30th anniversary documentary about the history of the show and stuff like that. Now, just before we carry on with that, let me show you something. So I also have this, which is the recent Blu-ray release of Shada. Now, this specifically is a special edition that was put out by Zavi.com. It's basically a, sorry, just pull that out there. It's a steel book. And so in this case, what they did was they actually did animated sequences for all of the incomplete. So for this, what they did was animated sequences for all of the incomplete scenes. So they essentially finished it with animation and brought back all of the surviving cast to voice their characters again, and basically finished the story. So using all the existing footage and all of the studio footage and the location footage and stuff like that. And this particular edition is a 3-disc set that includes basically everything from the DVD collection, as well as specifically all the Shada-related stuff. It doesn't include More Than 30 Years in the TARDIS. But, yeah, so it's as deluxe an edition as you can possibly get. There is a 2-disc edition as well. Now, the reason I imported this was because, first off, this is region-free. And I should note, it plays fine in my PS4, but will not play in my PS3. So maybe just make sure that your player can play, 1080p 50 frames per second video, because that's the format that this is in. So the reason I imported that is because even though we are getting a release here in North America, we are only getting it on DVD. We're not getting the Blu-ray. So yeah, so this is also kind of notable, and this is the first Tom Baker story to hit Blu-ray. And of course, a good chunk of it is studio footage that was standard definition, so that part is upscaled. As far as I know, they have access to the original film prints, so that stuff is all true high definition. And of course, the animation is true high definition as well. And it also comes with this nice little booklet, which gives you all kinds of information about the show and a bit of the studio stuff there. Yeah, and really fun. And I got to say, it honestly looks really good. So I'm definitely looking forward to picking up the Blu-ray set of Tom Baker's first season. So carrying on, we get into Tom Baker's last season with The Leisure Hive. Very cool. So this is where we got the new title sequence with the Starfield and the neon logo, and the Doctor's outfit was changed to the maroon outfit rather than the sort of more colorful one. And there we go. And then we got Meglos, which I should mention features the return of Jacqueline Hill to Doctor Who for the first time since the 60s, since the second season actually. Yeah, pretty cool. That was her final appearance in Doctor Who, and sadly she passed away a few years later. But it was great to see her back, and honestly, she had aged really well. Like, she looked really good, considering it was darn near 20 years since she had done the show. And then here we have the E-Space trilogy. So this is 3 interconnected stories. Got Full Circle, State of Decay, and Warrior's Gate. Now, apparently this is a re-release. They actually did put this out in a box set with the 3 keep cases at one point. And you can still find the 3 individual releases if you poke around a bit. But yeah, so this is the one I got. I mean, it was cheap, and it doesn't take up too much space on the shelf, which is nice. And then finally, we have this set here, New Beginnings, which features Tom Baker's last 2 stories, The Keeper of Traken and Logopolis, and the first story of the 5th Doctor, Castrovalva. So if we just take a little quick look here, I'll just show you. So it's just a fairly, simple, sturdy enough box. So we got The Keeper of Traken, and Logopolis. So this is, I mean, you can kind of call this the Master Trilogy, because the Keeper of Traken, the Master gets a new body. Logopolis, the Doctor gets a new body. And then Castrovalva is kind of the Master trying to destroy the Doctor post-regeneration, and the Doctor trying to escape his trap. And yeah, so it's a nice little trilogy of stories. I've actually always really enjoyed those. So that is it for Tom Baker's entire run there. So now we get into the Target books that I have. So we got Doctor Who and the Giant Robot. So slight change of title. I mean, the original was just called Robot, but whatever. That's a nice painted rendition of the robot there too, actually. I really like that. And then we have the Android Invasion. Very stately picture of Stigron there. There we go. And then we have the Mask of Mandragora. Very nice. And the Face of Evil. It's actually quite a striking painted likeness of Leela and the Doctor there. It's very, very well done. Some of these covers are just fantastic. I really like them. And then we got the Reboss Operation, which is the first story in the Key to Time saga. And then we have the Androids of Tara, which is another chapter of the Key to Time saga. I'm not sure which part this is. Part 3. Okay, The Androids of Tara is a novel in the Key to Time sequence. Yeah, there we go. Read the Reboss Operation, The Stones of Blood. Available now. Coming soon. The Power of Kroll and the Armageddon Factor. Okay, good. And then we have The Horns of Naimon. Very nice. Yeah, a lot of these ones I haven't actually read because and then the Leisure Hive. It's actually a really nice cover. I like that. Very good renditions. I haven't read a lot of these because, of course, I had seen the televised stories so many times. So a lot of the novels that I focused on in my younger years were the first and second Doctor adventures because I hadn't seen them. And some of the third Doctor ones as well because it wasn't until a few years later that they started to show the earlier adventures, so it was the only way I could see them or experience them. And then State of Decay. Great stuff. Doctor Who vampire story. And then we've got Warrior's Gate. So I actually got a good chunk of the last batch of Fourth Doctor stories here. Very nice. Warrior's Gate was the one that was Romana's departure, and K9 actually. They both departed in that story. And The Keeper of Traken. So I actually do have the novelizations of the full sort of trilogy of stories that sent off the Fourth Doctor. And then Logopolis. That's a really good rendition of the Master there. Okay, but it doesn't end there, because I've got more. Now, you may recall, if you watched my Third Doctor overview, there was the series of novelizations reprinted by Pinnacle Books here in North America. Well, the first 3 were Third Doctor stories, and the rest were all Fourth Doctor stories. So here, just in the order that they published them, we have the Genesis of the Daleks. You can see the covers are quite different from what appears on the UK editions. Just put these over here. And then we have Revenge of the Cybermen. And then we have Revenge of the Cybermen again. You'll notice the different colored logo. That indicates different printings. So that's why I have these, just to have a couple of different printings of them. Yeah, just for collector's purposes. And then here we have the Loch Ness Monster. Now this, of course, is Terror of the Zygons. For whatever reason, they retitled it Doctor Who and the Loch Ness Monster for the novelization. And then we have the Talons of Weng Chiang. Great stuff. And the Mask of Mandragora. So I got both the Target and Pinnacle editions of that. And the Android Invasion, very different cover from the British one there. Stigron even looks a little more Vogon-like there. Doctor Who meets his clone. And finally we have the Seeds of Doom. Okay, so I guess there was 10. There was 10 of these. And I believe I have all 10 of them. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yep, I do. I've got all 10 of them. So pretty cool. And then finally, there was a few, for whatever reason, the Douglas Adams stories were never adapted during the original Target run, and the main reason being was they just all kind of forgot. It wasn't that Douglas Adams was being stingy with the rights or anything, they just never asked him. So they never got adapted. So, well, they finally decided to adapt them. Sadly, Douglas Adams, of course, is no longer with us, so they've been adapted by other authors. So first up, we have Shada, adapted by Gareth Roberts. This is the trade paperback edition. And we have The City of Death, adapted by James Goss. Now, since then, they've also put out The Pirate Planet, which was the one chapter of the Key to Time saga that did not get adapted. You may recall here they mention Androids of Tara, Rebus Operation, Stones of Blood, Power of Coal, and the Armageddon Factor. But yeah, you don't need to read The Pirate Planet because, you know, whatever. Pirate Planet was the second piece of the Key to Time, by the way, and also a great story. So anyway, we finally got an adaptation of The Pirate Planet. So finally, like 30 years later, the Key to Time saga is complete in novelized form. And there you go. Oh, actually, one more thing I'll just show you, kind of as a curiosity. Another Target book here. We have The Making of Doctor Who, with, of course, Tom Baker on the cover. Now, this is actually a second edition of this. The first edition was published a few years earlier and was more about the John Pertwee era. So I definitely like to get that one as well, just to kind of have as a companion to this one. Especially since they're basically covering two of my favorite doctors from my favorite era of Doctor Who. So, pretty cool stuff. Oh, and since I forgot to mention it before, I should mention I also have this, which is a 4th Doctor book, The English Way of Death. This was actually sent to me by Andrazani Major, a longtime viewer and fellow Whovian. He sent this along with a bunch of Target books and some other stuff. There's actually a package opening which you can look at that goes through all the stuff that he sent. He sent me a whole pile of books. Very, very cool stuff and much appreciated. So there you go. That's the entire saga of Tom Baker's epic 7-year run on Doctor Who on DVD and a little bit on Blu-ray as well. Yeah, one of these days I will pick up the Season 12 Blu-ray set. It's definitely one that I want to get. Just haven't had the budget for it right now. I've had to spend my money on other things. But all in good time, all in good time. Alrighty, so next time we journey into the 80s with the entire adventures of the 5th Doctor. Take a look at all the DVDs I've got of his adventures as well as the Target books. And yeah, so we'll see you then. Until then, thanks for watching. Big thanks to my Patreon sponsors, and sayonara. Today on the Doctor Who overview on the Multimedia Chronicles. Well, take care of it in the dub. Quite a lot to cover. 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 White.